Our first presentation is about one of these new software programs that we have put in place here at the department. We've been using it for about approximately a year or so for taking in new projects that require site plan approval or subdivision approval. And it's worked out very well for us. It gives us a software package that allows us to coordinate electronically with other departments. It allows the public access to a project online. They can look at a project as it comes in, the initial application, as it goes through the review process. They can provide comments. They can see the revisions that have been made to the project. It's decreased our review times. It's increased our coordination ability. It's reduced the paperwork. No longer do you have to come in and turn in 12 copies of a oversized site plan or subdivision plat. So we're very happy with the way it's worked out. Now we're looking at expanding this program to our building permitting process. So we're taking a program now that we have used again for about a year or so for the purposes of reviewing new projects that require site plan approval and subdivision approval, and looking at expanding it out to allow builders to use it, building contractors to submit building applications to us. And we think we can achieve the same efficiencies that we did through our site plan review process by applying it to the building permitting submittal and review process. To assist us, Ed has sort of picked out a couple of guys, approached them, or contractors about beta testing this, making sure that we work the kinks out before we roll it out to the general public and allow it to be used by anybody who comes in for building permit application. I think Mr. Wynn over here is one of our guinea pigs, our beta testers. And I think Mr. Salvo has agreed. He's a pool contractor. So they'll be the two gentlemen who will be our beta testers on this as we roll it out. And hopefully by the first of the year or shortly thereafter, we'll be able to roll this out to the general public and allow everyone to utilize this new software package called Project Docs, and at the same time realize the efficiencies that we believe this will bring to the review and approval process, not only for site plans, subdivisions, but now building permit applications as well. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ed Gerald, our Building Plans Review and Inspection Director, to talk about the Project Docs software and how we will be integrating that into our building permit application review process.
Thank you, David. As David has already pointed out, we're looking to expand the Project Docs software over into the building plan review and inspection side of the development support. The Project Docs is just basically an electronic document review program. It is a web-based program that will allow contractors, developers to submit plans to us electronically through an independent website. That, as David has already pointed out, will allow us to increase our efficiencies by not having paper to look at and pass around the department. It will also save time, also save money. It'll be, we think, in building plans review, it will be a tremendous improvement to the processes as they stand now. The process will start with a link. Our link will be posted on our Leon County website, the Building Inspection and Plan Review website. By clicking on that link, you'll be able to enter basic data, the parcel ID number, things of that nature, information about your project that you want to submit. That's when the review process begins. Once that information is sent, an invitation is then sent back to you to and invite you to the Project Docs website along with a temporary password that will allow you to get into the program. Oops. This is a screenshot of the invitation, and there again, ladies and gentlemen, I know we're going to have a lot of questions about this because it's a new process, and what I want to do is just kind of give you the 30,000 foot level today. Okay, we're not going to try to drill down into any details, but this is a screenshot of the invitation that will be sent to you once you've clicked on the link and entered your basic information. It will have the login name, which will always be your email address. It'll have a temporary password, your project number, which will typically be the building permit number, the group invited by, and then at the bottom, excuse me, at the bottom it will have a login to project docs. Click on that link. It will then take you to a web page where some additional information will be asked, including a new password, some security information. It will then list the your email address, your title, your company name, and then a phone number. Those will be the required fields that we'll need, basic information that we'll need to move forward in the process. This screen here will show us all of the projects that you have currently listed in your account, once your account is set up. You may have multiple accounts here listed on this page. At any one time, you'll be able to go in and pick out any project that you have in the account and have activated and look at where that project is. There again, it's going to be able to save you time of picking up a phone and calling us, trying to get a hold of a plans examiner or someone who can give you some information about your project. It's going to have all that information right there available to you. And any one of those projects that you have listed here, you can get information on. Just simply go up and click on the project. It will then take you to another screen that gives you the project name, the description. All of that information that you see here will be available to you. These are folders in which will contain information that you have uploaded. When you first initialize the project, all of these folders will be empty. There'll be no need for you to try to pull anything up there. The only thing that will be of interest to you on this page will be the applicant upload folder. When you get to this page, just simply click on that link. It will then take you to another page where you can then upload all of the specific information that will complete your application. In the case of a single-family dwelling, it'll be things such as your flood letter, your wind analysis, your energy efficiency forms, your product approval numbers. All of that information will be moved from your computer over into Project Doc's website. Okay? At that point, you'll go down and select all the files that you want to submit, highlighting them, and then of course clicking on the Upload Now button. That will automatically upload all of the information that you have just moved over from your computer into Project Docs. Okay, once that's done, the files are loaded or populated. It's then sent to the plans review staff for their review. They will be sent an email letting them know that you have uploaded this information for this particular project. Once that's done, they'll go into Project Docs, and this will be the screen that they will see, which has all of your information already listed out here. At this point, they'll move this information over into the files that we were just looking at, the file folders. But it will contain plans, it will contain the wind analysis, it will contain the energy form, all of the things that they need to see to review your project. Once we get that email and we go in and look at it, we'll start our review process. The plans examiners will then go through the information that they've received, that you've already uploaded, and do what's called a completeness check. We want to make sure that everything that we need for a review is there in project docs. If there's information that will be lacking, we'll then identify that information that we need, and then we will generate an email to be sent back to you letting you know what information is lacking and what you still need to provide. Okay? Once we get all that information in, the review process will start. This is a document. This is how the plans examiners will see your document, all of your documents. It's just, it can be put in, the documents can be put in a PDF format. It can be sent in as a TIFF. It can be sent in as an AutoCAD file. There are like, I think maybe 300 different file types that project docs will accept. Once those are uploaded, this is what we'll see and what we'll review. I'd also like to point out this is one of the ways that we're going to be able to save you a lot of time in your review or in your project submittals. At the time you submit this, every one of these documents that you send to us will be able to be reviewed by everyone, from plans review personnel to licensing personnel, to environmental review people, to addressing folks, zoning staff. Everybody will be able to see this concurrently if they want to. Right now, our current process is linear. It starts out here, it goes to this person, and this person, and then eventually it all comes back together, and then we call you to come pick up a permit. Well, that's going to be out with this program. All that time that it takes to do the linear process is going to be eliminated, and all the review staff at one time will be able to see these documents and do their review concurrently. Okay, so that's another tremendous time-saving, money-saving feature of this program. So that's the format that we'll see. When we review the project, we'll be able to put on the plans specific notes. And here you can see that we've highlighted this area of the plans and put a note out, the HVAC door is too small. Okay? We will then, once that's done, once the review is complete, send it back, or not send it back, but it'll be uploaded back into project docs. You'll then be able to go in and review what we've already reviewed and put in project docs, so that you'll know what to correct, and things of that nature. There again, time saving. You won't have to come down here and resubmit new plans or anything of that nature to satisfy our comments. Those comments will all be right there in project docs for you to review. When all the phases of the project are completed, the plan review is complete, environmental reviews are done, addressing is done, contractor licensing has reviewed it, checked all the subs and licenses and what have you. Even our septic folks across the hall here, they'll be involved with this. So their review will be done. Once all of that is done, we'll notify you. You can call down and talk to us about coming down and picking up your permit. We'll be ready. Everything we'll be able to print out for you. Also, a set of plans, the reviewed set of plans. It's got red stamps on it. Your septic permit, your wind analysis will be there. Everything that you need on the job site to start your project and then have your subsequent inspections done and move you through to final CO. So that's at the 30,000 foot level. That's kind of project docs on the building plan review and inspection side.
Okay, as David said, we both city and county staff. We had biologists, engineers, myself, over about an 8-month period, basically tear apart both the Environmental Management Act ordinance, which is the county, and the Environmental Management Ordinance, which is the city, and try and find some common ground to minimize confusion. And a lot of times I had spoken with a lot of the consultants, and they were thinking along the lines of the city because they had done 4 or 5 projects in the city, and then they came into the county and it's like, oh, we're back to that particular standard. So I think it's extremely beneficial that we, on what we achieved, to be able to have one set of minimums, as David had said. And the first part of that was actually was approved. The environmental standards were actually approved on May 8th of this year by the board with an effective date of the 15th. But the stormwater standards, which really started driving it, as David said, water knows no boundaries, were actually approved about a year ago. We just have it up here to refresh everyone's memory on it. We had significant differences in standards, recovery requirements, just a whole plethora of different standards between city, county, state, and now fortunately we have one set minimum standard. And for the engineers in the office, they're the watershed conservation measures, or also referred to as lake protection measures, and that's typically termed for the one most often used is the filtration standard, and that's 1 1/8 inches over your development area. That is now the county-wide minimum standard. We now have no differences back and forth between the boundaries, which caused a lot of confusion. The other significant change was the Lake Jackson 50-year retention standard, which is very strict, and the Bradfordville standards. When projects are along city-county lines and there are annexations, there's a lot of confusion as to which standard was to be applied. The standard is now county-wide, so if it is in the city, they will be permitting it the same way as in the county and meeting those particular standards. So we will no longer have that confusion. In addition to that, there were differences. There are a lot of minor differences that we worked out in terms of stormwater calculations, etc., and submittal requirements. Retention recovery requirements was part of that. We now have a couple of options in there to try and make it a little bit easier. A lot of times when you deal with retention, you're having difficulty with recovery. That's the hardest part. And we've got minimums now, both city and county, that also includes a 40-year continuous simulation, which the engineers, I'm not going to get into it, the engineers know what I'm talking about. That is now both city and county and in code. We've had a lot of policies that we've worked towards to get you there, but now we have one set minimum on the stormwater side. Also part of the confusion is in that we had a lot of definitions that were different. 2 or 3 of the ones, the most common ones, were a wetlands definition that was different between city and county and the actual state, which can cause confusion. Native forest, high quality successional forest, those definitions are now all the same. Both city and county have that on the same page, making it much easier for the biologists to identify those particular preservation features which are required by the comp plan, and other definitional changes that help make our codes more similar. We do still have one major difference on the wetlands side as to how we treat wetlands. In the county, all wetlands are protected. We still have a difference in that in the city, if the wetlands are degraded, you can do stormwater treatment in there. That has not changed, and that difference goes all the way to the comp plan. So we could not change that particular requirement. I just put that up there because that's really the only major difference between us and in the city right now. And wetlands are always a big issue in the county. One of the significant changes that we did was on the buffer side. There was a lot of confusion in the county's matrix in that, not confusion, but we had different buffers just based on your zoning designation and the soils in a particular area. We got together with the city and realized that there was a lot of confusion between the two, and we simplified it. The buffers range from 20 foot all the way to 50 foot, or to 100 foot, could go that high. We now have just a 50-foot set buffer for your watercourses, wetlands, whether it's commercial, residential, etc. Simplify, eliminate confusion, and speed things up. In addition to the buffers, for the first time in the county, we're allowing sidewalks in the canopy road setback. The community we all love our canopy roads, but they can be unsafe at times, especially if you're trying to walk or bicycle on them. And if you've been behind a bicyclist on Meridian Road, you'll know what I'm talking about. But we now have the provision, as the city had, for allowing a 6-foot wide sidewalk with appropriate mitigation, and I have the discretion to allow up to 10 foot if there's enough mitigation and minimizing effects to trees along the canopy road setback. On the landscape side, we had a lot of similarities. The one that was extremely difficult and we resolved was the amount of green space. And in order to resolve it, the county and the city have, we have natural area and landscaping. The city has urban forest and landscaping. It was very, very difficult to mesh the two. But the bottom line was we came up with a minimum 40% green space area, and that is in the numbers. We used to have 25% of the total developed area in the county. It is now 20%. That makes us consistent with the city on the amount of green space, and that is how we actually resolved it. So ours is a combination, again, of natural area landscaping. Theirs is urban forest and landscaping, but we both end up with a common goal of about 40% green. Now that can also be reduced through a lot of other different options, but we're not going to go into that at this point. The one difference between the two of us is the canopy coverage over paved parking, and that's basically to prevent heat sinks in parking lots. We made it a little bit easier to do and clarified that we can also allow the coverage over vehicular use areas as you're driving in to count towards that, because it can be difficult, and depending on your parking lot configuration, on getting that canopy coverage. And the city does it with landscape islands and certain number of trees in the landscape islands, and we couldn't come to an agreement on it, but they both achieved the same goal, and I think we've made it a little bit less difficult in order to achieve that particular standard. So I think that'll be welcome on the development side. Tree protection. Very similar on both codes. The only difference within the urban services area, you can remove all the trees up to 36 inches DBH during development. When you come in for your single-family home, you can do that. If you do widespread clearing, you still may have stormwater impacts. We try and minimize that, but that is the requirement, both county and city now within the urban services area. Outside the urban services area, removal of trees less than 36 inches only when there is a lawfully occupied residence. Those are the exemptions. You can remove up to that quantity. In the larger rural areas where the homes go in, we allow minimal clearing around the house and for a reasonable, front and backyard, but not extensive amount of clearing unless other mitigation is provided. We also, in order to minimize the amount of time we're having to deal with arborists for handling tree mitigation techniques where you're cutting the roots of these big oaks that we're trying to protect, we now city had very good standards in there of what you do in terms of, root pruning, fungicides and that in order to keep these large trees sustained. That is now in code, and you can simply point, reference it, pull it out. You don't have to keep going over and over again to get the same amount of information for, that an arborist just pulls off, will pull the same information out. So we think that that's going to be very helpful as well when we're dealing with tree protection issues. Redevelopment, there was a lot of discussion. This is basically untouched. There are a lot of complicated issues within the city and the urban core areas, and it's basically the status quo if you're doing redevelopment within the city. And in the county, we expanded our redevelopment was only within the urban services area. We expanded it beyond the urban services area to allow, if you have an older site, there aren't a lot of them out in the county, but outside the urban services area, you still get landscape credits and various credits for rate issues, etc., on the redevelopment end. So that was slightly relaxed there, and hoping that there may be some additional sites out there in the county that where we can use that those redevelopment incentives. That's those were the primary changes as far as the environmental standards go. The total standards are, they're about this thick, and they're on our website. A lot of other minor subtle changes, but if you have any questions on that, we can answer at the tail end. But that pretty much is the short version of the changes to those standards.
My name is Brian Weebler. I work for the Tallahassee and Leon County Planning Department in the Comprehensive Planning Team. Okay, and we're in charge of carrying this project through that David was just describing, and this is based on direction that was given by the Board of County Commissioners. I do want to back up for just a second and mention a couple of things about the comprehensive plan and amendments to the comprehensive plan. The City and County Commissions accept proposed amendments from internal and external from private entities to do amendments to the plan once each year. And we take that packet of amendments forward through a fairly extensive process, and I'll show you the meeting schedule that we have coming up for that. But it does involve about 6 different workshops and open houses, and then 3 different public hearings, 1 with the Planning Commission and 2 with the City and County Commissioners sitting together. So just kind of wanted to let you know where that is. We do have 7 amendments to the future land use map that'll be moving forward in this cycle. And then we have 5 different text amendments. This amendment to the slopes policy is one of those text amendments, and then we have another text amendment that is cleaning up some of the environmental definitions that John had pointed out in his presentation, where the city and county came together in the code to unify their use of definitions. We are also then going back into the comprehensive plan to make sure that those definitions are all the same so that there won't be any hiccups in the future. So with that, I'll come back to the steep grade amendment. This ties straight back into the minimum environmental standards process. And so when the board adopted that ordinance on May 8th, they also provided the planning department with direction to move forward with this comprehensive plan amendment. We've worked closely with John Kranak in the county and Steve Palmer in the city. They were two lead staff members on the environmental minimum standards project. We worked with them on what we want to do with steep grades in the comprehensive plan. And it turned out it was a pretty simple amendment when you get down to it. We are just making those standards not apply inside the designated urban services area, with no changes outside the urban services area. David touched on this, that we had a 20-year history of doing incremental policy changes to address specific projects and specific needs, where we had all of these funky requirements about inside and outside of Capitol Circle and in downtown, not in downtown. And so this does away with all of that past kind of detail that was put into the comprehensive plan, and just says inside the USA these regulations don't apply, outside they do. In doing that, we had a side benefit for policy geeks like myself. It was exciting that we had this history of dividing out city and county for all of these different specific needs, and what that resulted in was pages upon pages in the comprehensive plan that spelled out the conservation and preservation features for the city separately and for the county separately. And it all boiled down to the way we were treating steep grades as being the divorce, if you will, between the city and the county. And so I think this was kind of exciting to have this come through following on the heels of the county minimum environmental standards, to be able to unite these policies again. And so as part of this, if any of you take the time to look at it, you'll see tons and tons of red strike through, and that is getting rid of all of these separate city-county policies and bringing them back together. So a nice benefit, added clarity in the comprehensive plan. Lastly, this is that schedule of meetings where the public will be reviewing this proposed change. It does look like a lot, although I do have to say we have been taking advantage of some changes that the state legislature has made in the comprehensive planning requirements to take this process down from more of a 9 to 10 month process into more of a 6-month process. So we have shaved meetings out of it, reduced a lot of the review time that the state takes in the process down. So it looks like a lot. We do take these very seriously, comprehensive plan amendments. The commissions take them very seriously, the community takes them very seriously, and staff takes them very seriously. But we have been able to streamline the process a bit, but you'll see there's still abundant public review of these. So this is what we'll see going through the process. It does have already support by the Board of County Commissioners initiating it, and support from the users group that was developed as part of the review for the minimum environmental standards. So we're hoping for a positive amendment that will move forward with some good support from the community.
What we had done in the comp plan was effectively remove the language in its entirety for the slopes within the urban services area. What you will see, and what the city and county has agreed to in ordinance form, was that all of the slopes, the slopes are effectively removed from protection unless you're within 100 foot of a preservation feature, meaning like a wetland, a water course. We looked at the issues where you see these steep ravines with the beautiful vegetation and that, where you have significant issues of potential erosion in that. Those are things that we still want to protect, and I think that was one of the big provisions for protecting those areas. But even though we're still continuing to protect those slopes adjacent to those features, being that it's in ordinance format and not in comp plan, there's no roadblock. If there is a very good project and if there's mitigation provided that offset it, we both have variance processes. And so if there's the need for it, that would be something that would have to go before a variance board. But those would be the only slopes. At the same time they were doing the comp plan language change, we had drafted the ordinance language change in the minimum environmental standards. So that's the way it's going to look as we stand.
For some background on the two-track review process, in 2009, at that time, Commissioner Debbie Lightsey and Commissioner Brian Deloge, were looking at ways to basically functionally consolidate city and county recreation departments. And they called the meeting, which I attended, which included representatives from the consulting community, the development community, Chamber of Commerce, economic development folks, and basically said, what's your take on this whole consolidation thing? And during that meeting, it became fairly clear that, consolidation, whatever, maybe the most important priority of that group was expediting the review process. Time is money. We need a quicker review process. If it can be achieved through consolidation, that's great, but we need to have a quicker review process specifically, and also we need to be able to spend less money to get like a thumbs up from the city and county when we have a project. We don't want to come in with a project, have to spend money after money after money, and then find out we have issues, that they're not going to allow the project to go forward, because we're basing our financing, our business plan on a certain amount of density or intensity of development. We need to go in with the least amount of money in the quickest time and get it either up or down from the city and county. And during that meeting, there was a discussion about the city and county need to really look at doing that through through changing their processes. And as a result of that, and to really address those concerns from that group, we here at the county looked at our review process. And at that time, basically, we were encouraging people to do concurrent reviews. When I say concurrent, turning in their site plan, subdivision plan, and their environmental permitting at the same time to reduce that time frame for approval. But most applicants were not doing that. And also, we lacked a conceptual approval track in our code where you could come in with a limited amount of information and get a conceptual approval that would guarantee that project could move forward. So as a result of that, we amended our review process to establish what we call the two-track review process. That became effective in October of 2010, so we're about 2 years into this process now. What is the two-track process? When you come in with a new project now, a new site plan or a new subdivision, the decision is yours. Do you want a concept plan approval, meaning that it will be fairly quick and not require as much money to be spent on your part for engineering and other types of information? Or do you want a final development plan, which means when you leave the building, you have all your approvals. You don't have to worry about subsequent environmental permitting. You don't have to worry about typically the other things that people address after they get their site plan approval. So we established this two-track review process, which gave the option to the applicant coming in, which process do you want to go through? Do you want the concept plan approval, or do you want the final design plan approval? You want to leave the building with all your review approvals for the final design or the concept plan approval. Again, this has been in place for 2 years now. Of course, development's down, but we have 14 projects that have come in during the last 2 years, and every applicant has chosen the final design plan approval track. I'm not sure why that's a reason. I think probably because we don't have any speculation. There's not a lot of speculative development going on right now. When that market picks back up, we'll probably see more interest in the concept plan approval. But right now, all the applicants that have come in have chosen the final design plan approval track. Also, we've seen development times because of the concurrent review that's occurring under that track be reduced by approximately 50%. So we're seeing the applications get through, get reviewed, and get out of here in about 50% of what we saw before we introduced this two-track review process, for those applications going through the final design plan approval track. Let's see. Of course, we've had a couple of projects that didn't qualify for either one, and those are the large PUDs like the Renaissance School out on Buck Lake Road. If you have to go through a rezoning process, which you're going to have to get board approval, you can't really choose. You're going to have to go to the board. So you're going to have to go to multiple public hearings. There is a process that's required to go through the PUD process because you're changing the official zoning map. We have the large Park Place PUD, which is north of Capitol Circle, northwest, and I-10 as well, went through the PUD process in the last couple of years. The second thing that we've put in place in the last 2 years to sort of augment this process and to assist in our customer service delivery is the project manager model. Like I said, this was sort of implemented concurrently, so it's sort of been in place for a couple of years now. What we've done is we internally, we're divided into 4 divisions here. We have our building plans review, our environmental division, we have our development services, which looks at land use and zoning, and then we have our licensing and code compliance divisions. So we have a lot of internal review that occurs when the project comes in. And oftentimes, the project will come in and it may be a fairly straightforward building project, but there may be a land use or zoning issue. Maybe there was something that occurred on the property that needs to be remedied through a land use action. So projects oftentimes would come in and get bogged down in this process of bouncing back and forth between divisions and between different review processes. To address that, we propose to the board this project manager model. And what that is, basically, as a project comes in, it's assigned to a project manager. And that manager will serve as, if you will, the advocate for that project, that proposal. And make sure that it gets through those, it goes to environmental, if there's no issues there, or if there are issues, being able to move it through that process and make sure it gets through all the different loops that are required from zoning, land use compliance, environmental, building, licensing, or whatever issue that may come up. Also dealing with outside entities, specifically public works, when they're involved in the project. So basically, this is a process where, as projects come in, more complicated projects specifically, they're assigned to a project manager. And that project manager will reach out to the applicant and say, hello, Mr. and Mr. Applicant, I'm your project manager. Here's my email address. Here's my telephone number. If I have questions about this, I'll give you a call. If you have questions, contact me directly. Basically the advocate for that process, for that project. We believe, based upon 2 years, that of course it's definitely enhanced the coordination internally between our divisions here, as well as the public works, and it's also improved the communications, because oftentimes an applicant, specifically the non-professional person, or the owner-builder type who comes to us, comes in, they've never been through our process, they come in to the front, they submit an application, they don't know what happens next, and they're kind of lost and they're waiting, and so they don't know the routine. It's helped those folks, that type of clientele, but it's also helped the regular people who deal with us all the time by increasing communications. This is what's going on, this is where you are, this is the issue, I'm working on this for you, or I'm doing that. So we feel like it's been a very successful program, and we did report back to the board and got some accolades from some of our constituents about as well. So that concludes our agenda today, and again, I want to thank everyone for coming out. I'd like to open it up if anyone had any questions on any of the topics that we've covered today. We have everybody here, or if you have any comments, recommendations, suggestions based upon your interaction with us, we'd be glad to hear those. Or if you want to leave your card and note on it for me to contact you, I'd be glad to do that, or anybody here would be glad to do that. And with that, I'll open it up. If anybody has any questions or comments.
I have a question on project docs, and that is, how are y'all going to handle the signing and sealing portion of it? Are you going to require electronic seals? Or are you going to allow people to submit those paper copies, signed and sealed? How's that going to be handled?
Yeah, the sealing of documents, specifically the flood letters, the plans that are required to be sealed by statute, will be allowing the electronic seal to be affixed to the plans with a number. That number has to be submitted and uploaded with your documents that you submit
So
to
you'll be
us.
allowing that, but you'll also accept paper copies?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Joe.
The comments on the plans, for instance, the water heater door is too small. Will we get notified about those comments one at a time, all at once, or how will we respond to those comments?
Yeah, good question. When the plans reviewer gets his documents and everything from you, he will begin his review. All the way through the review process, he'll be making notes, comments on what he sees on the plans. Those comments, those notes will be posted. We can either do it in a tabular form, like an email document if you want, or a Word document, and upload that to the site for your review, or we can put those notes right directly on the plans. That's a detail that we're really going to have to work out, and thank you for being a beta tester here for us, because a lot of things that we're going to be working out will be done through this beta testing, but the notes, the comments will be able to be put onto the plans themselves, or to be uploaded, scanned and uploaded in a Word document or something of that nature. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Question about site plans for residential site plans. This doc may help a little bit, but when I'm out on site after I turn in the site plan, and when I get out there and I realize I need to move this house 2 feet. If I move it 2 feet in the city, I can move it 2 feet. In the county, I have to resubmit. And that is a major pain in the rear. I mean, I'm wondering have y'all thought about that in this? Obviously with doc, I guess I could resubmit, but it still takes some time. I mean, it slows me down in the field by possibly 3 days.
Yes.
4 days. And when it's a minor change, I mean, it's, sliding the house one direction or another, because we all know out in the field, things don't work out exactly like they do on the plan.
Sure.
And, you're in, for us to move it a little bit, really doesn't affect the water that much, doesn't affect what we're doing with it that much, and your guys that are out in the field, your inspectors, typically, I mean, they're making us change something anyway. Even sometime on that plan, we may have to adjust it. And I'm just wondering, can you consider allowing the field to deal with that instead of us having to re-permit?
Yeah, I can address that. It's a very good question. It slows you, those changes slow you down, and of course, time is money for you, for builders such as yourself and Mr. Hartsfield and Mr. Strickland. We understand that, but we also understand that there may be, on a site that it's not particular to you, maybe another site or whatever, there are reasons for having a re-review done when you do move a project. But perhaps you got an extremely tight lot. Moving it one way or the other may affect a setback, or it may affect a conservation easement or a utility easement or something that's adjacent to the property. So we instituted an internal team to look at this. It's called the process review team, and we have a consistency memo that's come out from those meetings, and we developed those requirements for resubmittal based upon the review of everyone in this department because of those, marginal lots, those areas of the lot that might be affected by the moving of the house, or, the change in the shape of the house, or whatever it might be, or the building. So that's where we've come, that's kind of how we arrived at it.
But I see an opportunity, Tom, I do, particularly with the full implementation of docs, project docs for building applications. You'll have an inspector with a computer in the field, he can pull it up. I mean, it's live time and going to look to see, so there may be some flexibility that will allow us to come back and readdress that. And I didn't realize, Robbie, I'm sorry,
Well, let me just, because I've had issues with the same thing, move the house more to the
Yeah.
But what Tom's trying to say is, if you have a lot that's got those restrictions, but it's like a lot that you got a half-acre lot, you're nowhere close, and you just repositioning the house a little bit. I don't see why the common sense in the field can't determine that that's all right, rather than, or he can determine, no, you do need to do this site review because you are applying your limitations. I think that's what we're trying to say is that you got a lot to develop. There's no big deal, we moved it 2 feet from the original site plan. But the guy in the field ought to be able to make a call whether we need to go back and resubmit, or if we're fine, go ahead and review, or go ahead and move forward, but get us something and not hold us up.
That's a very good idea, Rob. We'll certainly take that under consideration. We'll discuss it. Yeah.
I did have a couple of questions.
Sure.
One for you, one for John. When you're doing your project docs, typically, like say I come in tomorrow and permit a house, we're paying $600 to $700. Was it submittal fees? Or whenever we submit the plan, there's a fee. How are you going to do that with project docs? Are you just going to hold those fees to the end? Or are we going to have a fund that we have to keep here for you to pull money out of? Or how are we going to pay that fee?
As you know, the building permit fees, Robbie, are paid when you pick up your permit. We do have it's not an application submittal fee, if you will, but it's an upfront fee that I believe that John collects on his side of the fence. Maybe a project status review fee that is collected up front. We'll have to deal with that when we get into the process. We're still looking at it now from the 30,000 foot level. We're going to have to do some internal training. A lot of different questions are going to come up, which I'm sure this is one of them.
So probably we're not looking like January, right? First quarter, second quarter next year.
Well, no, our plan is somewhere around mid-January. Yes,
Yeah, we
we're
want to
still
get it
there.
going as quickly as possible.
Yes.
The second question for John. John, whenever we're running into something on older neighborhoods and we're not, taking away that. So if we have a customer looking at a lot and we see a swell on this lot, because I've had to pay for downstream studies, $3,000 or $4,000 to get this because it wasn't in a flood zone, but because we had this and it could potentially overflow. Are you saying that is that still going to be an issue if there's a swell, a ditch, or something touching the corner of that property that throws us into potential?
I think you're still talking about looking at lot-to-lot drainage issues. That could potentially be there. What we're saying is that there's no storage or a facility that's actually holding water that's going to be placed on site. You may still have conveyance issues that have to be addressed because of your lot. And one thing that I always suggest, because you're out there putting bids out all the time, and a lot of times you sort of get a feeling that this could be a problem just based on seeing a 5% slope coming down on the property or something. If you come in, we can give you a better indication, as up front. And we have a service advisor that's here that provides free service. And if it's a non-engineer, they can get, one of our engineering staff to say, hey, this is going to be a potential issue, and these are the reasons why. we have a project that's, I look and I tie directly involving you. We have a project that's actually been on hold now 2 years because they're trying to divide Luna Manor up into 6 lots, and they can't find a way to get the water through your property. So there's pluses and minuses. You know, they don't want to do all of that they have to do in order to try and mitigate that. But, you know, so those issues can be very, very problematic.
Well, I know, because I learned my lesson, but there's a lot of developers out there that doesn't really know. If you have a swell or you have a feature on your property, it can just, so don't let your customers buy it until you. But,
Yeah, those conveyance issues are still, you know, difficult, can be difficult issues.
The slope issue that we're talking about, so just so I understand, inside the urban service area, we're not gonna have to be setting aside, if we've got 10 or 20% slopes, we don't have to set that to property side anymore. It'll just be something we'll just deal with internally in our development.
In your development, unless it's within 100 foot of a preservation feature, which is a wetland, watercourse, floodplain. You know, there's about 5 or 6 of them we name karst feature. You know, come to mind, you know, there's several property around Lafayette Sink in Falls Chase that just drop right off. You know, those slopes and that would be protected and that. But all the others, you would just be, they're effectively there, but you just have to do your normal grading, and just deal with it.
there's not many that doesn't have something.
Well, that's part of it. So if it's within 100 feet, is it the slopes that are within that 100 feet?
Yes.
You'll be dealing with? So from that point out, 100 feet, so if you're, okay. That's good. That helps.
Any other questions? We're getting close to 1 o'clock.
I have one for closed basins, just for clarity. The closed basin exception for single-family homes does not apply to all single-family lots. It's only those lots that existed prior to the comp plan adoption. Is that what I heard?
Correct.
And what year was that?
1990.
Right, yeah, July 1990.
Lafayette Basin, is that, they're out? You don't have to
Unless
put it.
unless there's a lot of flooding issues, and that would have to be addressed.
Yeah, including, I mean,
Lake Lafayette, you no longer have to put a hole in Lafayette?
Lafayette Oaks, I think you're referring to with the flooding at the bottom of the basin. No, if you have a raw lot out there, you're still entitled to your single-family home if it's an older lot. Now, closed basin standards still apply, because I had this question come up. Even when you're doing a simple 1 into 2, you're creating a new lot, you're having to do closed basin standards for that new additional lot, 1, 2, 3, and et cetera. So.
When does that, let's say they build on their vested lot and then a year later come back with an addition, is it still?
The additions, we've had a lot of discussion on this because obviously we had a situation in Pine Tip Hills where they were expanding their house to more than twice the size of the additional home, which is sort of unusual, but that does occur. And on those, we're going to be dealing with that on a case-by-case basis. But if you're doing a pool addition, I know Mr. Salvo's here as well, pool addition or minor additions on the homes, for sure, up to half the, more than half of the additional impervious, we're not requiring closed basin standards, but we haven't really completely decided, you know, is there a threshold? Because you can, crazy things can happen that we don't have, you know, standards or direct policy direction on. So if you're doubling the size of your house, just come in and see us first, and then we'll discuss and
But if
see.
you're only putting in something that's half the size of the original house, you're not gonna really mess with it.
Correct.
Yeah, that's sort of our rule of thumb right now. John and I have been bouncing around.
When you say half the size, so you're talking half of the impervious soil? In other words, if they go up and down, but so you're adding a smaller footprint?
Correct.
It doesn't, okay.
Correct.
On the customer interface for Project Docs, does it have, I mean, because on the back end, you guys can have 4 or 5 different people within the process looking at those same docs. Is it the same way on the customer side? Meaning that, if you have, you log in once and then that person who initiates the file, if they have an assistant or something, are they able to view the docs, or are they able to see it? Can docs be sent from the county to multiple email addresses, or is it just one email address?
Yeah, good question, Jules. The way we're proposing to handle that is if you have additional staff within your company or corporation or that want to see the documents at the same time as you're looking at them, what we're proposing there is to set up separate accounts for those individuals within your firm. That's not going to be a problem. We can send an invitation to that individual. Just let us know who they are. We'll send an invitation to those individuals. We'll create separate accounts for them. They'll be able to go into and look at the documents that have been submitted, the things that we have reviewed, our comments, things that we have placed on the website, but it will be for review purposes only. There will be only one person who will be allowed to upload that information to us for submittal to us, and that will be the original count.